Cosmo, what use is telekinesis if you can't even aim?
You wanna do it? Do it!
Just concentrate, you stupid mutt.
Guardians of the Galaxy was a messy movie, but it was definitely one of the better modern Marvel movies in my opinion. Almost right up there with the previous Guardians of the Galaxy movies. However, there was mixed reviews when it came to this movie. And granted, while there are definitely warranted writing issues with Guardians of the Galaxy 3, most of the complaints I've seen in reviews about this movie were of the darkness of the portrayal of animal torture. Now, believe me when I say that I am among those who cannot tolerate, cannot stand, cannot stomach witnessing any sort of animal cruelty, but especially when it's done in bad taste, as it means to emotionally manipulate the audience cheaply. Still, I think there's a way to achieve what needs doing in a tasteful manner without sacrificing effectiveness. The way they did it in Midnight Mass was definitely the tasteless way to do it. The amount of suffering and the longevity of the pointless scene was nothing short of a sadistic psychopath's wet dream. I mean, there were other ways this could have been portrayed without watching and hearing a dog suffer and crying in pain for 3 minutes as it died very slowly and painfully as its owner just sat there bawling helplessly, not knowing what to do. That's the kind of thing that I would say needs trigger warnings. It also felt very out of place from the rest of the show. I don't even want to show anything concerning that scene because it's so freaking disgusting. In Guardians of the Galaxy, however, presenting the sequences from Rocket's flashbacks has a purpose.
We're gonna need names. I would like my name to be Lila.
Firstly, I would argue that the entirety of the flashbacks are not just animals being tortured. Sure, we see animals that were altered for whatever reason, but a significant portion of Rocket's flashbacks shows them forming connections and friendships with each other, offering hope amidst their difficult circumstances. Moreover, it's evident from the previous 2 films that Rocket has a troubled past that he's reluctant to discuss. As such, it's clear that something horrible and tragic has happened to his friends, and he's the only one who managed to survive. So the groundwork for this revelation was laid in the previous movies. Therefore, the audience already anticipated a tragic backstory for Rocket and was aware that something horrible had happened to his companions, or in his life. As a result, the payoff of finally witnessing his dark past adds to our comprehension of his character, provided the viewer is invested in understanding him. And even if they weren't, learning about him would definitely make them intrigued. The scene where Lila is unsuspectingly killed as Rocket and she share a painfully brief moment of utter joy, being able to embrace each other right before their hope is fulfilled, serves as one of the most hurtful scenes in film history. The look of confusion on Lila's face as all she feels is pain and her life leaving her and not understanding what is happening begins a catalyst of agony, grief, shock, and rage in Rocket. Throughout the totality of Rocket's suffering, he's never actually dealt with grief and loss, and he displayed extreme grief in that scene. Teefs displayed immense shock, and their poor rabbit friend, Floor, was panicking, as all Floor could do in that moment was urge Rocket, Teefs, and herself to leave immediately. Despite seeing all of this, and despite her gate being wide open, neither Floor nor Teefs thought for one moment of leaving Rocket. Teefs' expression of abject horror was nailed down so precisely. The horrifying sight of the other henchman killing both his friends as he was mauling the villain's face further pushed Rocket over the edge. The same villain who callously murdered Rocket's friend proceeded to taunt him as he wept, thus provoking the very rage he sought to eliminate from his other creations. Though he managed to escape with his life, Rocket had to leave behind the corpses of the only family and friends he had ever known, that he had dreamt of starting his life with when he finally attained freedom. I can understand why some people might find Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 to be too dark or depressing. The movie does deal with some heavy themes such as grief, loss, and animal cruelty. However, I think it's important to remember that these are real issues that people face in the real world, and it's important to talk about them. Although I will agree that they kind of made a joke out of Star-Lord's grief when they had something there in the beginning, then completely went away with it throughout the entirety of the movie. But understanding Rocket's past experiences is crucial to understanding his current behavior. His traumatic past has shaped him into the person he is today. By exploring his history, it really becomes easier to empathize with his character. It's tempting to write Rocket off as a cold, uncaring, and and distant character, but delving into his backstory highlights the reasons for his behavior, making his story more captivating. The story of Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is not merely about a crime-fighting talking raccoon, it's about a survivor who has endured hardship and has found a new family and a renewed sense of purpose in life, as can be said with all of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Now, I do agree with some who claim that they could have driven home that point a lot better when he was dying, and instead of being told it wasn't his time, he should have made up his mind to go back and be with his friends because he now has new purpose. They could have showed him apologizing and releasing his grief to move on with his new family, which included Peter Quill and the Guardians of the Galaxy. I do agree that there was a missed opportunity there to show how important his family was, his new current family. Having Lila tell him that it's not his time yet takes away some of his agency and makes him seem more like a victim. So one of the things they could have done was have Rocket experience a moment of self-reflection. He could have thought about all the things he has been through in his life and all the things he's accomplished in that very moment as he's about to walk into the light. Ultimately, I think it would have been more satisfying to see Rocket come back to life on his own terms. This would have shown that he is a survivor who was not afraid to fight for his life, and it would have been a payoff for his character. Also, the person who had hurt his friends was still out there, and so it would not have been within Rocket's character to just go and live out his fantasy in heaven without bringing justice to the one who hurt his friends. If Rocket had a flashback in that moment about the High Evolutionary and remembering everything that he went through and then remembering his family and how they fought for him and how they fought for each other, we would have seen a shot of him coming to a moment of realization, stop walking, and look up lovingly at Lila. Rocket would have told Lila in that moment, "I'll see you soon. It's not my time yet," and he would have come back and fought for his survival. And then, at the end, it would have been more satisfying to see him peel off the face of the High Evolutionary rather than Gamora, who has no stake in this fight. The scene felt like a missed opportunity. Perhaps the filmmakers wanted to showcase Rocket in a positive light, but given the villain's heinous actions and how he had taken the lives of Rocket's friends, the audience would have been rooting for Rocket to exact revenge. Nobody would have had a problem with that. It would have been so satisfying for viewers to see Rocket tear off the face of that monster wearing that face, stare into his eyes, and declare he doesn't deserve a quick and merciful death. Indeed, the villain should have been left lying there, forced to confront the consequences of his actions. I think everyone would have completely understood his actions at that moment, and that would have been in line with his character. Maybe people expected the movie to be bright and cheery, but then people were also upset because a lot of the Marvel movies are too bright and cheery and don't tackle dark themes. Here we have a movie that actually does that, and I think for the most part it tries to balance it, which actually does a better job of that than most Marvel movies, even if the balance is not totally perfect. I don't believe that Guardians of the Galaxy 3 went too far with animal suffering because it was already an integral part of Rocket's backstory. If the filmmakers had inserted randomly without any connection, it would have been in poor taste. When we see what a character went through, especially if it's something that brought about great torture and suffering, no matter how difficult it is to watch, it serves to help us empathize with the character. For that reason, it definitely feels as though it were a necessary part of Rocket's story, although many could argue it probably should have been its own movie rather than just flashbacks, which made it most interesting parts of Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I will say that it's okay to have some emotional manipulation, as John Wick did the same thing. We also see the same thing occur in the movie Taken. In each and every action-packed film, most stories where the audience is rooting for the good guy to win include a tragic history, including the hero losing something important to them, or experiencing some other kind of anguish at the hands of the villain. And the story with Rocket was no different. It actually added depth to what would have been otherwise a generic copy and pasted Marvel movie. But what is your take on the story of Guardians of the Galaxy 3? Do you think they should have made the third movie about Rocket and about family? Do you think it was right for them to have closed out the saga with his story? Do you think this might have been a case where they planned to do this at a later point, but because James Gunn was going over to DC, they decide to implement this now, essentially forging 3 stories into one? Anyway, thanks so much for watching. This has been Ultiori. You ask, we answer.